a negotiation was done between between GE and the government, that can they get a level playing field in the project business for them to also do technology transfer in the product business. So this was the beginning, and of course it was agreed on a basis that GE sources $30 million of software from India. This was I think, the brilliant brainwork of many bureaucrats, Habib Hussain, and many people, Mr. Ahluwalia, all those people are behind, Jairam Ramesh, they were behind in crafting this strategy from the government side. And that is how it started. And this opportunity which came as a joint venture with Wipro, we had to make a success. But the position of GE was number 6. And if we had to gain the trust of the customer, we had to offer some benefit beyond what the other people were offering. So, like any other organization, we thought that a pricing power is required by the medical business to be able to sell the product in India. And a pricing power does not come because the parent wants to sell it at a loss or anything like that. For a sustainable business, pricing power should come in taking the cost out. And the pursuit we did was that to take the cost out, manufacture in India. And that is how the Make in India started. That genuinely, if we want to improve our market share from number 6 and aspire to be number 1 or number 2, we have to produce the product in India, which is appropriate for India at a much lower cost, open the market, and that is the way to go, is what we thought back in 1989.
Brilliant, brilliant. Mr. Prasanna, when we look at innovation, when the innovation is happening, innovation is not just tech innovation. In fact, I always maintain that disruption need not displace what is existing and replace it with something new. It could also be building efficiencies or doing things differently. When we look at innovation beyond the product and beyond making the product in India, the second challenge that every company has to face is selling that product to the market. Was there an innovation in how you were selling the business model that GE and Wipro adopted to create the market for its products? Was there any innovation done at that point in time?
In fact, the innovation was a very interesting one, which I would call it today social innovation. What we observed was that there were a lot of wealthy people who were from traders and other professions who were successful in their business, like carpet selling or making halwa, but they did not have the social respect. They were still considered as not intellectual, not the, they would not get the respect they wanted. So they wanted upward social mobility. And one of the things done by a lot of people was that if you do social work like building a school or building a hospital, that wealthy person got additional social recognition as somebody who has contributed to the community. So there were a lot of people who were in this class of people who were successfully running their business, who wanted to climb the social ladder, and they were thinking of doing something in the medical field. Want to set up an ultrasound center or a CT center or a diagnostic center or a small clinic or a small nursing home or a hospital. But they did not have the clinical or medical capability. So we thought that if we can make these people successful by bringing the right clinician with them and then overcoming whatever are the challenges in creating a business. Because a business doesn't get viable because you give a grant in the beginning. A business becomes viable only if the income from the business is positive and that can be reinvested for the business to be self-sustainable. I was so happy to hear that Sakal has sustained itself for 90 years. Imagine. Sustainability is one of the most important things for long-term life of a business. So, so we had to innovate at every step how to make this combination successful in establishing a clinic or establishing a diagnostic center, and a lot of innovations we had to do beyond the product.
Great. Uh, Mr. Prasanna, when we think of GE, one of the first things that come to my mind is speed of decision making. GE is known for that. And I remember reading in the book an event which was about a meeting of GE with the PM's office in India, and the speed at which they responded. Can you share a little bit about that incident?
When the PMO threw a challenge that can you import $30 million of software? The software export from India maybe was $4-5 million. And primarily it was TCS and maybe a little bit of Patni computers which were doing it. But to suddenly one company accepting to import $30 million of software was something which was out of the box. And for Jack Welch and his team, India was very important market. They had stronger belief in India's future than a lot of Indians had in 1989. We were quite pessimistic. We were looking at some dark clouds coming ahead in the foreign exchange and all that. But they thought that 10 years, 20 years ahead, this is an important place a big company like them has to be. So the G got within a few weeks a team of people to come and assess. Companies like Infosys, Wipro, Satyam, all those companies which are in the field, and come to a conclusion whether there is a capability to send the software or not. And within 4 weeks, they agreed with the government of India. And within 8 weeks, they had the medical business coming and searching for a partner. And within 12 weeks, they announced the medical business joint venture with Wipro. I had not seen any company moving at that type of speed to make things happen. Now, when you talk of speed, Mr. Narula, I want to. The medical business was dominated by Siemens, Philips, and Toshiba, L&T, and other people. If you look at all of them, they're electrical companies. Electrical companies have a slow rhythm of business. And GE and some of the progressive companies had already moved as electronic companies, computer companies. The pace of change in that business is very, very high. So the pace of business is very high. So even the way GE conducted the business and found the right partner, Wipro, who also had a fast pace, was one of the important factors for this being a success.
Great. Mr. Prasanna, another thing that comes into mind when we are inviting companies, foreign companies to do business in India is the ease of doing business. And a lot of us, many of us have actually grown up being told that business करना आसान नहीं है, बहुत मुश्किल होता है, इतना पैसा सही तरीके से नहीं निकलता है, And here we were talking about a company which was known for its ethics, In your experience, how did the ethics of GE played the role in making way for it to become a major player in India, despite all these myths that were there?
See, when I told you about the negotiation between GE and the government of India, so-called level playing field, what did it mean? It meant that on merit, if the choice is made in these big projects, then a company like GE can compete and win. But invariably, a lot of deals were associated with commissions and middlemen and a lot of leakage of money. And so GE's negotiation with the government was that if there is a straightforward, honest dealing, and if that type of buying process can be guaranteed where they would like to participate, then they would invest in technology and invest in India. So the basic ground on which they had assured the government was that they will play by the rules of an ethical game. And that was so important that even in businesses like medical or electrical or motors or whatever it is, there is absolutely no slippage ever to be allowed not to conduct the business in a manner which is not ethical. And because if that they slipped, the competition or anyone else would point out that what are you talking about? You yourself are doing this nonsense and you expect that in big deals you want a clean transparency. So this was one of the reasons why at that point of time, all of you know that the duties were high, the taxes were high, income tax was high. So everyone was very smart in trying to avoid all these things. Not only avoid, but somehow play with the rules and make money. So under invoicing, over invoicing, commissions, they were all rampant. And in medical business also it was there like any other business. So to be able to do honest business in such an environment was a big challenge. And we found that 25-30% of the government business was clean, straightforward. We could do it, but in a lot of both private and government we could not. So we had to go and create a new market where those customers will play by the rules we set of straightforward, ethical, clean working. If we tried to break our head in the old market, where already entrenched people were doing things which are not sound commercial practice, we could not have won the game. And that's how we had to create a new market.
And Mr. Prasanna, also, we are talking of tier 2, tier 3 these days. And we are talking of healthcare industry. And in healthcare, we know that, it is not an equitable space, even today. Forget about what it was about 2 decades ago. We always had healthcare facilities more skewed towards large cities, metropolitan areas. At that point in time, you created a business model which looked at tier 2. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how did you make it happen?
See, the healthcare business requires affordability by the patient to pay. In metros, the top 20% of the society had that ability. So obviously the business was concentrated, whether it is a super specialty hospital or government or private. They all concentrated where people could afford to spend from their pocket for sophisticated healthcare. Now, when we found that playing in that metro cities, already the competition is entrenched and practices are not straightforward, we thought that let us go to the state capitals and the next level cities like Pune and other places, where if we are able to create a business not on grants, but on the business being viable from the patient fees, then we may be able to set the rules of the game. But to make something viable in Pune or Hyderabad or some place, one, the fee per scan had to be lower. And even when it is lower, if they have to take a finance and return the money, they had to work those equipment not 10 hours a day, but 20 hours a day. So medical entrepreneurs and the other entrepreneurs have talked about had to also put in a lot of effort to earn and serve the patient and collect the money and repay the loans and become successful. And that was the sustainable model which helped build a sustainable healthcare in tier 3 cities. And then that was led by G, and so G could set the rules of the game.
You know, another thing, I mean, when I because of the role that I play in the industry today, I get an opportunity to speak with a lot of healthcare players, everyone in the ecosystem, right from hospital owners to medical equipment manufacturers, to all the hospital care, pharma companies. And the moment we talk about medical equipment and we talk about the acceptance of made in India product, especially in healthcare, because that is, really got attention after the recent pandemic. I hear doctors, hospital purchase staff talking about, you know, I'm not too sure about the quality. I'm not too sure about the accuracy levels of the readings, etc. And we are talking of manufacturing equipment almost like 2 decades ago, right? And being able to offer the quality which was a world class at that point in time, which could not be challenged in India. You know, how did you make it possible at that point in time while we are struggling in this particular sector even today?
See, we started with, can making in India reduce the cost? Cost is one of the factors. So we have to understand, what is the doctor looking for? The doctor was looking for clinical accuracy. If he does a diagnosis, that diagnosis must be very accurate, unquestioned. And the patient should not be required to go and repeat that scan at some other big city. So clinical accuracy is extremely important to demonstrate and prove. Clinical accuracy comes not only from the equipment but also from the doctor and technologists who operate the equipment to understand how to get the best out of that. So we have to focus on that type of thing. Second is that I told you that those doctors and entrepreneurs had to work the equipment for 20 hours a day. So they could not afford even 1 hour or 1 day or 2 days of breakdowns. So they wanted very high reliability. So very high reliability, how do you ensure? So people would say that we want Indian cost but Japanese quality, because Japanese equipment were known not to fail for a long period of time. So the mindset with which even big companies like Maruti and others were manufacturing in those days was that there used to be a phased manufacturing program where progressively the local content would be increased, and the entire focus was adhering to the phased manufacturing program and meeting the commitment made to government. But what we felt was that clinical accuracy, reliability, if they are important for the customer, we have to do the manufacturing to meet those requirements. So how does reliability come in? So for that, we have to understand reliability engineering. There is what is known as failure mode analysis. Reliability does not come from intensive testing inside the factory alone. When the equipment goes out into the field, whether it's a defense equipment, whether it is a medical equipment, whether it's a machinery, there are failures which occur after 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, suddenly. At that time, for several days the equipment is down. So how do you identify this failure mode, which may happen after the factory, after the equipment leaves the factory? And how do you design to take care of that? This we have to learn from the Japanese. Same way with suppliers. Suppliers are not just for reducing cost. you have to build a supply chain which makes parts which are as good as the best in the world. So for Indian suppliers to be brought up to that level, we had to learn a lot of things on vendor qualification, supplier qualification, supplier testing, etc. And when we did all that, finally, I think what we told the Japanese company which was supplying technology to us from GE Japan was that, can you use those parts in your equipment? So you can send it and sell it in Japan with the same confidence that it will not fail after 1 year, 2 years. So what do you need to teach us so that it does not fail in Japan? And I tell you, those are the tricks of the trade we placed emphasis on to learn and implement and make rugged, reliable, clinically accurate, low-cost products. Combination of all that is what led to success.
Mr. Prasanna, in your book, you have a mention about the inspiration that you drew from Abdul Kalam, right? Can you share what that inspiration was and how did it create an impact in your life?
So, I write in my book about mentors, how much mentors influence leaders. In my early days, my mentors or my heroes were Homi Baba, Vikram Sarabhai, because these were people who, against the toughest odds, and with not IIT brilliant people, but with engineers from any other college, they created the atomic energy industry. They created the space industry at a fraction of the cost of what West was doing. And there was so much of nervousness in Western countries that the way they were going, I think all of you know that Homi Baba died in a air crash, and there is a strong sabotage. Same way Vikram Sarabhai died when he went to Trivandrum to inspect the space program, and he died in his sleep in Trivandrum. So the foreign forces went so much after our country, but people like these people did not relent. They were in mission mode. They said India requires this mission to be accomplished, and with meager resources, with all limitations put on export controls and the like, we will still do it. That is the spirit they created in public sector organizations. And I think, I had a great respect for that. And Dr. Kalam was a leader who came from that school. When the country had the capability to do a nuclear weapon, it did not have the delivery capability. And it could not get the delivery capability from any country. I think a lot goes to Dr. Kalam to have created teams which went step by step, mission after mission, to create, put bigger payloads in space, to create bigger launch vehicles, get to cryogenics, get to all sorts of fuels which can boost the rockets. And what he did was amazing, with very limited resources and a lot of pressure. And it was not only in the field of space. He was a great human being who had also did work in the field of medical technology. You might have heard of Somaraju Kalam's stent. See, he used the DRDO metallurgy to create the material on which there are so many restrictions by Medtronics and other companies. Nobody knows how to produce that stent material. But it was produced in Hyderabad by Dr. Kalam and Somaraju. Similarly, the heart valve was produced in Sri Chitra Tirunal Hospital by Dr. Veliyathan and a team of people from defense. So these are very inspiring stories. So when Dr. Kalam asked me that can you create a equipment to do heart surgery in a village, I accepted that challenge only on one condition, that he should work with us as a mentor and we should have access to DRDO. So he said, from the government rules and regulations, for a foreign company, I cannot give access to DRDO. But DRDO is only a central organization. What DRDO has created is a supply chain in India of defense and space material. And those resources are country's resources open to anybody. So he said that I will help you with those suppliers. I will give you two examples, what he did. So one was that to transport a cath lab on a truck to a village on bad roads. And the cath lab is a very sensitive equipment. It could not be transported like that. So he told us that they have a rocket launching station, trailers they have designed, which takes the space rocket to Sriharikota on very rough roads. So he said the trailer is being made by so and so company. You go and work with them. I will tell them what additional features they should build to transport the cath lab. Then we wanted a sterile operation theatre to be kept on that trailer to be taken. And the challenges of village, it's not easy to get the sterile operating theatre in a village. So he sent me to Gwalior. In Gwalior was a unit which was not in the public eye, which had robotics. Now I'm talking of mid-90s and late 90s. And those robots could pick up a dirty bomb thrown by any foreign troublemakers into Kashmir or wherever it is. It will go and grab that and put it in one container. That container was designed by DRDO. And that container was lined with RDX. And from a satellite, a laser, so he said you use that container. It is so sterile, nothing can come out of it. So, there are people like this who could think beyond the ordinary. To be able to say that there are applications, if you have the motivation to do something good for good outcome, there are many ways to overcome the hurdles. So that's how I was motivated to Dr. Kalam.
Lovely, lovely. I think the underlying intent of doing the good requires a lot of inspiration, and you've been able to utilize that inspiration to create further inspirational stories. And much of these stories have been covered in this book. Before I let you go, Mr. Prasanna, my last question to you is, how has been your experience of writing this book? Because I'm sure it's like reliving your own journey of last so many years.
Now I want to tell you that all the people sitting in this room are capable of writing a wonderful book. But you don't get to do it because you are feeling that, there's so many hurdles, will it really sell and the like. I was in the same state as you. And I knew that, this story has to be told, this story has to be shared. But I could not bring myself to do it. So then, I was approaching my mid-70s. And then I was hit with a medical condition where I felt that I may not live very long. So I said, now this cannot wait. Now it has to be done. So that was one motivation. Second motivation was that when I first wrote and read it to my wife, She said that this is a wonderful story, but this won't sell. So I asked her why. She said, you have written it to people who have worked with you, who may be only 1000 in number, out of which only 100 may read. But if you want a book to go to many, many people, it has to be told in a different way. You are not telling the way it has to be told. So then, I, I was thinking what to do. So then I came across Mr. Tiwari, who has narrated Dr. Kalam's books. He has, Dr. Kalam used to share with him and he wrote the books. And today he has written more than 30 titles of various authors and he has sold 3.5 million copies. And he earns royalty worth several crores. Now, Dr. Tiwari was part of the Dr. Kalam Cath Lab project with me. So I requested him, can you just take a look at this book and narrate it in your way? So that is one thing, which made a difference. Then also I felt that this is not my biography, this is an industry story. For the industry story, you have to talk to several players in the industry. Like your book, Doctor, you repeatedly told that she has interviewed for 4 years so many people for part of the journey. Same way, 42 people contributed to this book, including Babita Saxena, who is sitting in the last row. She also wrote as a woman leader what she did. And so it became a story of the sector, became a movement of technology, movement of innovation. And that is how that became a much more broad-based book. Then I went to Harvard Business Review. So they looked at the book and said, yes, we want. I was very happy. So I asked them, how long will it take? So they said 3 years. So, I was telling you I wanted it fast. 3 years, why 3 years? I asked them. They said, first you have to write blogs. And the blogs will be analyzed by us. Then you have to write in the Harvard Business Review. Those articles will be reviewed by us. Finally, we will turn your book upside down to suit our format. So it takes, then on the books we take up, it should rank in the top 10 books. We publish only 10 books in a year and we review 15 books. It will be included in 15. But whether it will come in 10 or not, we cannot guarantee. So I said that, then I asked them, how many copies do you think it will sell? I said 400 to 500 copies. So I thought that 3 years, 400 to 500 copies, what to do? Then I asked Mr. Tiwari, what do you suggest? Because he has sold 3.5 million copies. There must be something different. He said that, there are many organizations below the radar. If you want to go to organizations, the distribution muscle, it's not HarperCollins or it's not Penguin or it's not Harvard Business Review. You should go to, you talk to Ashutosh Sakal. So I did a reference check of Sakal. So people told that, Sakal, why are you going there? They're only a Marathi publisher. They're not known outside Maharashtra. Your book will fail. So then I went back to Mr. Tiwari and told him that, look, this is the feedback I'm getting, what it should be. So he said, why don't you ask Ashutosh how much you will sell? So he told me that I will sell 2,000 copies and I can produce the book in 6 months. Now I didn't look back. I said, let me go and put my energy behind Sakal and make it work. And I'm happy to say that the first print run of 5,500 copies is sold out. Not because of me as an author, it's the equal amount of work by Sakal as well as Mr. Tiwari.
You know what? Two things really come out of it. choose the right publisher, and second is don't ignore what your wife says. So that's very, very important.